Welcome to session 4 for the 2014 project hosted by your friend KC, Kristoffer Carter. My mom still calls me Chrissy, from This Epic Life. So what have we been talking about so far over these last, wow, is this the 4th week already? January's long this year. Am I tripping, or is January pretty long? We have 5 Thursdays in January, and this is the fourth out of a 5 series webinar. Pittsburgh present. Could that be my friend Rachel Gogos? Impossible to connect with Rachel Gogos, or maybe I'm the one who's impossible to connect with. Sorry about that. Heather Stimler Hall coming in from Paris. Detroit's in the house. Love it. Bridgewater in the house. Wow, we have Paris, we have Canada, we have Los Angeles, all over. We have gorgeous Akron, Ohio. It's gorgeous up in here. So with that, I'm going to kick it off here in a minute. And from Boulder. All right, right on. Oh, do we have another Akron, Ohio person joining? Love it. Linda Buckner, so good to see you. I can't tell you how excited I am. I hope you guys got my email from earlier this morning. I have not so secretly been probably the most excited about this episode for a number of reasons. I think it's because sessions 1, 2, and 3, soul, vitality, family, are things that are so ever present and ingrained in my day to day that I really wanted to move forward into our outward expression of everything we have to offer, which includes creativity, art, expression, and of course work next week. So that's how we have it kind of teed up. I want to jump right into it. Are you guys ready to jump in? Are you scared? I'm a little scared. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not scared at all. Do I look scared? Hell no, I'm not scared. All right, we all know this. Can't burn the candle at both ends anymore. I hope you've already started to experience a few of the little shifts that are taking place. It's really contingent on your level of practice that you're doing, specifically around the soul practice. If you're waking up and meditating, I could tell you right now that I'm probably up against one of the biggest creative project deadlines I've ever had to deal with in my professional career. I'm not even shitting you. It is a real phenomenon. And because of that, I have to get up at 5:30 every single morning, 7 days a week, meditate for an hour. It's not, I don't tell you that to impress you. I tell you that to tell you just to show you that I truly need it. And I don't use the project as an excuse to squeeze out all my self-care. It's quite the opposite. I use the self-care to completely power the project. So as people around me start freaking out at different points in time about the deadline looming and when we got to send this stuff to the printer, and oh my God, I'm basically designing on-site training for 240 coworkers, executives, and a 28-page full-color workbook to go along with it. None of this stuff existed 1 week and a half ago, by the way. It's all happening in real time. So that's how important meditation is to me, to keep the crazy train on the tracks, as well as my miles and the vitality practice. And I will tell you, I'm going to give myself a C- this week for vitality because it is so damn cold outside. I have not got the miles in. However, I will say that I am doing all my energization exercises, which are tied to my yoga practice. I'm walking around more. I'm standing more. I'm drinking a lot more water, eating a lot more salads, eating a lot less meat. So I think I'm probably giving myself an A or a B in the diet category, but probably a C or a D in the movement and physical category. How's everybody else doing with their practices so far? Wow, Martin. That's amazing. Our friend Martin out west said that he neglected his meditation practice one day and it was kind of a shit day. I don't know if the two things are correlated. I will tell you this, if I haven't warned you yet, that sometimes when you start meditating, well, almost always, you start opening up different cans of whoop ass in your life. So if certain things get harder at first before they get easier, don't be surprised because you're basically uncovering some stuff that may have settled down beneath the surface. You have to tackle some of that stuff in meditation. And don't be alarmed. That means that you're making progress. Anne is loving her, Anne Rutherford, I believe, loving her sunset meditations. I'm so happy you're with us, Anne. All right, friends. Oh, wait, Melissa said she's totally on track with meditation. She just forced exercise to an inside option. She's weak on the water. I'd say I'd give that an A overall. I mean, if you guys are meditating and making little tweaks in your life so far and it's only about the 3rd or 4th week of the year, trust me, where you end up at the end of 2014 could be someplace completely different than when you set out. And Joe's writing a poem every single day. I love it. You guys are awesome. You're so inspiring. I want to quickly recap what happened on last week's episode. We talked about that family comes in many forms. It could be your nuclear family. Certainly, I'd count your friends and relationships, your family of origin, and your larger world community or spiritual community. We discussed this idea, specifically Jennifer Boykin had some of the most beautiful words on this subject, but the idea of balance is a myth. There's no such thing as family balance. If any of the pictures I showed you lead you to believe otherwise, trust me, I'm in the same boat as everybody else, just trying to make it work, trying to not make anybody cry in a given hour in my house. But this week has been particularly challenging in terms of balancing my current workload with producing the show each week, with the family stuff. But, I'm doing my best, and I feel like my family relationships are probably in one of the best places they've ever been. We owe each other the world. All the human relationships in our lives are the reason why we do what we do. We're here to serve each other, and that's, it's not limited to just people that depend on us for food and sustenance like kids. It's all of our neighbors, family, friends, colleagues, vendors, all that stuff. And we left with a simple ask, and I hope it was clear, but my ask was that you just tell them about it, which is, have you talk to some of the people that you care about, that you depend on, and just really look them straight in the eye and told them exactly how much you appreciate everything they're doing for you. One of the best moments that's happened so far this year was I woke up on Saturday morning and I had just posted the recap for the Session 3 show, and Gail and I were laying in bed, and I reached over on my nightstand and I grabbed my phone, and the kids were kind of running about the house at this point, and that's always kind of a scary proposition because you hear cabinet doors opening and closing, and they're trying to make themselves these crazy ass breakfasts and stuff. It's totally insane. And we're laying in bed, and I roll over to her, and oh, by the way, I think I had gotten back in bed after meditating at this point. But anyway, I rolled over to her and I said, "Hey, can I play you something on my phone?" And she said, "Yeah, what is it?" And I said, "I want to play you an excerpt from last week's show." So I played her maybe like a 10-minute segment of when I was talking about our family and kind of our family legacy. And it was this really beautiful moment. Like, both of us just had some tears in our eyes, and then the kids were coming in at this point and climbing up in bed. But I count that as my following through on my own homework assignment, which is I told her specifically how much I appreciate everything she does for me. So there we have it. And any of the replays, you could find them at thisepiclife.com/2014 dash whatever number it was. So it's -1 for soul, -2 for vitality, -3 for family. All right, let's talk about the lens. We ready to talk about the lens a little bit? We got to cover off on the lens a little bit each week because I keep getting tons of them sent via all sorts of different media, and I'm loving them to death. So the lens can either enhance or diminish all we experience. I told you I used my lens last week to get me through some dicey airport situations. I certainly say it to myself when I'm in that quiet place after meditation. I talked to my friend Laura Neff about this morning, is that when you do the work of meditation, whether it's 5 minutes or 15 minutes or a half hour, 3 hours, whatever it may be, the real gift you have to give yourself is sitting for a couple extra minutes after. So say you have a 10-minute meditation. You're bringing your focus back for 10 minutes. It's hard. Your mind wants to run amok. You're bringing it back. But you reach this place where you've actually cleared all the static. You've done all the hard work, heavy lifting of meditation. And most people's mind kicks in at this point. They say, okay, the buzzer went off. I'm out. And they bolt, and they're out in their day. They're filling their heads with static again. So I would encourage you to sit for another couple extra minutes and just really look around and be mindful of everything and be grateful. Maybe say your lens statement to yourself a couple times, because that's the point in your day when I promise you are the most susceptible to suggestion. So you start believing the hype about your lens statement when you're in that state of zero static and gratitude. Does that make sense? Sit for a couple extra minutes in the meditation. Not a super long time. I try to sit an extra 5 or 10 minutes and just really soak in all the work I did. Very key. And that is straight from the mouth of a monk, by the way. One of these monks that has guided my own development. He said, you have to give yourself the gift of sitting for an extra 10 minutes, because that's when your consciousness actually expands. It's not happening while you're doing all that work. The work is helping, but when you sit for a couple minutes afterwards, that's when it all sinks in and the good ideas come to you, the creative thought comes to you. Sound good? All right, so here's some lens statements from this week. My friend Julie out west in San Marcos, California. I wake up with a feeling of gratitude and I'm able to hang on to it. I'm creative in fulfilling my non-negotiables. I am patient and empathetic in all of my interactions. I have fun and I laugh often. Julie, I want to be your friend. Just by based on reading this. The only thing I changed with your lens statement, by the way, is you could tell I did the same thing as I did to Mark's last week. I just made everything very present tense. So it's not I will be patient and whatever. It's I wake up with the feeling I am patient and empathetic. I have fun and laugh often. The present tense is so key because you start to convince yourself that you are already becoming. Vicky, curiosity fuels my thirst for acquiring knowledge, which I assimilate in both an intellectual and visceral level. I am courageous in facing into the dark recesses of my soul and accepting of what I find there. That is so compassionate to yourself. I thought that was beautiful. Again, with the empathy, openness, trust, and love, being resilient and wise. Vicky, this is really, really strong. I'd be impressed if you could memorize all this, by the way, and say it to yourself often. I love this one. I got this one from my friend. I think I might know who this is, but I'm not sure. But one of our listeners in Columbus, Ohio said, I am the CEO of my own life. The choices I make are mine. To foster happiness and inspiration to others is my daily practice. I love that he used the word practice because that connotes discipline. Discipline is one of my keywords for this year and one of the not so subtle features of the 2014 project. I'm trying to instill a little discipline, not like smack you on the ass with something discipline, but just daily practices that we keep coming back to that always keep moving us forward. Just a little bit of a lift each day, but that discipline, it creates so much confidence in ourselves. It's really important. My family is there, is the reason I perfect myself, leave every interaction better than it was when I arrived. And he ends it with run, 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 which is, of course, vitality. So really strong. I like that one. I thought that was really fun. If you have lens statement, please, again, call the number, share them with me. I'm happy to interject them into the show and give you some feedback on them. And just call this number and let it rip. Sound good? And all I need really is your first name. If you want to include the city you're in is really helpful. And then the statement. All right, that brings us to this week's show. It's not the average show. Oh, no. Did he kick on a drum beat? Yes, he did. He kicked on a drum beat. Oh, what up? No, I'm just kidding. It's not going to be like that. I just wanted to play a little bit. I don't get to play my bass as much as I'd like to. This morning in the city, I told the cabbie right there, stop. I saw this guy I thought I knew in the window of the coffee shop. We stared for a second through the glass, man, I could tell he might know me. Sized up that corporate jackass, said let's jog your memory. Before you went to college, hope you never afford that suit. Before you met your wife and kids, around Burgundy rocked the flute. When the internet was farmland as far as the eye could see. You lock yourself up in your room and you rock that energy. You played bass. You didn't have nothing better to do. You played bass. And that was good enough for you. You played bass. Any of this kind of getting through. You played bass. I almost didn't recognize you. Yeah, I play when I really need to play because it's one of those things, again, like soul, vitality, and family that just fills me all the way up. Everything comes back to me, you know, why I do the things I do, how to combine a bunch of disparate, separate ideas that have no business being on the same page together into a cohesive format that's generous to the user. I use my music in a sales context, when I'm reading a room, how to convey ideas, how to move people and get them to light the hell up versus just sit there like, I'm not going to engage. Certainly with any of my graphic work. And so the point of the show really this week is to talk about ways we can infuse whatever our creativity is into our work. And if you're lucky to work in the mode of your creativity, like I know my buddy Silas and his wife Lisa are on, he's a career musician and he's brilliant at it. He just had an awesome write-up in a magazine about it. And, you know, very few people I know have been fortunate enough to make a true living doing their God-given gift of creativity. However, I want to instill this idea in all of us working stiffs, myself included, that all the creativity you bring to your job, everybody only benefits more and more, and especially you. So let's talk about expression, creativity, and art today. This picture was taken last week for my new website, by the way. Wow, getting my dad on. All of a sudden, it's one of those pictures I see where I'm like, damn, I'm not a kid anymore. But I kind of like it. I don't feel like I'm getting older. I just feel like I'm getting better. All right, so why is this so important? I think I just talked about the why, but it really comes back to this idea that we're compensated in our lives in direct proportion to the value we create for others. I've talked about this over and over. That should be no mystery. That's how the world works. And what I would encourage you to think about is that that's directly tied to what you create. And I don't care if you're creating revenue as a salesperson, creating widgets in a factory, creating opportunities, creating software, creating poetry. It all comes down to creation. And we are put on this earth to create. And I don't know if you read the email that I sent out about the show today, but I mentioned this quote by Brene Brown. And before the show started just now, Cynthia and I were talking, and Cynthia Morris said that she was sitting right next to me when Brene Brown said this quote, which was, unused creative expression is not benign. Meaning that you can't just sit on this fire hose of God force, higher power, whatever you want to call it, working through you as a vessel. You can't just stifle that or pretend it doesn't exist or pack it away in a closet somewhere beneath your golf clubs. You have to honor it. You have to show up and you have to let it through. It's really what you're here to do, is to express yourself. And again, we're lucky if we work jobs and we're paid directly for the things that we create. However, I would argue that whatever job you have, it could be the most soul-sucking, sitting in a cubicle, shitty-ass job, and believe me, I've had all of them. But I have found ways in every single one of those situations to be creatively expressive. And now I happen to be in a job where I am completely rewarded in direct proportion to my creativity, and they rely on me to be creative. Like, I have to be infinitely creative at the drop of a hat. So just some things to think about as we get into this week's show. I want you to check out this quote. Have you guys ever heard this quote? The only truly people are children and the creative minority. I just think it's so brilliant. The only truly happy people are children. I kind of can vouch for that, living with 3 of those nutters myself. And the creative minority. So why are the creatives the minority? Like, why don't people think about these things in a day-to-day context? Like, how can you show up day after day, year after year to a job, trudging through, not really digging what you're doing just to collect a paycheck? It's unacceptable. This might surprise you, but I was not always this graceful swan of a man you see before you, as if I'm a graceful swan of a man. I did mention that I tried to walk up the stairs on my face a few weeks ago, right? But I was a really awkward kid, like everybody. This was an actual sweatshirt I would wear on occasion. And music was really the first language I spoke with any level of confidence. I started playing cello as a 4th grader, which is how old my daughter is now. And I just never gave up on my love of music. My grandfather would take me to see the symphonies in New York City at Lincoln Center. I would go see Broadway plays. I loved all sorts of shit rock hair metal on MTV. I had a striper jacket with all sorts of striper patches on it. I loved ska. I was always open to any and all types of music, but it all started with cello for me. And I moved into classical piano. The most recent album I did was called The KC Show Season 2. That's actually on iTunes if you want to check out any of the songs from it. But I played all the instruments on it except the drums. It was probably, at the time, the single biggest creative project I had ever taken on. It took me a few hours to start and about 4.5 years to finish. Just going back and laying all the tracks, all the vocals, all the songwriting. It was just a major experience for me. And I just remember feeling, there's nothing to compare to that feeling when you get your record or your book or your finished product shipped to you and you just hold it in the driveway. You rip it open in the driveway and you just look at it and think, I did this. I somehow made this thing happen, put it out into the world. But that was a really proud moment for me. Most recently, after that, I was doing one-man shows at college campuses as the KC Show, which is just looping all my instruments together into a one-man rock show. It's like a one-man live iPod on crack. And you can see elements of integration in this, by the way, is that, playing one instrument is totally enough for me. I'm totally fine just playing an instrument or actually just speaking. But this idea of integrating different textures and layers and forms and vibes and beats, it's always just been really fascinating to me. So I always loved artists that did the looping, the live looping stuff. And here's some of the unexpected benefits of maintaining my creativity is getting my daughter involved in singing with me. So this happened at my brother's wedding a couple years ago. She got up and sang a few songs in front of all the wedding guests, and she floored everybody. She was great. She has great pitch. And just this summer, we hosted this event called Porch Rocker in our neighborhood, where everybody donates their porches to about 70 bands throughout the day, and everybody plays all day long. It's just this great neighborhood day of rock and walking yard to yard with beers and stuff. And my daughter got up and sang Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen, and I thought it would be good. We practiced it a couple times, but she killed it. There was probably about 200 people in our yard when she sang it, and the video on YouTube probably has about 7,000 hits or so. But from that moment, she's been really serious about singing. She doesn't want to take singing lessons, but when we sit around and play at my house, some cool stuff happens. She wants to learn some songs by some of my idols, like Ani DeFranco. We sit around and talk music. We make up silly-ass songs about her brother and sister. So, again, the integration of creativity and family. And I've mentioned this one, the integration of creativity and work. Singing with my CEO at our company. This is such a, these moments are so special to me because I literally forget if I'm working or not anymore. Well, that brings us to the main event this week. So who's excited to hear from my coach and creativity / writing guru, Cynthia Morris? Vicky is. Bobby Joe Hickman is. I talked to Bobby Joe in Chicago last week, and one of my coworkers at Centro, and she was so thrilled that Cynthia Morris is going to be on the program. So let me get Cynthia queued up here really quick. And 1 second, I'm going to have her share her webcam request. But let me tell you a little bit about my friend Cynthia Morris really quick. Oh, she's there. Can you hear me, Cynthia Morris? Hold on a second. All right, now can you hear me, Cynthia Morris? I think you're muted.
I'm joking.
Oh, there you are. I can hear you. Can everybody hear her? Good. What did you say? It was cut off still. Oh, you were messing with me?
I was messing with you.
In front of my global audience of colleagues, you're messing with me?
I love it. It's what I live for.
The technology's hard enough, Cynthia, you freak. All right. Hold on a second. Let me tell you a little bit about my friend Cynthia Morris. Can I do a little bit of a slideshow about everything I know about you, Cynthia? That'd be my honor. Could I do that?
Go ahead.
All right, cool. This is what I know about my friend Cynthia Morris. As I probably mentioned, I dedicated the manifesto I wrote, which launched all of This Epic Life and the framework to the world. I dedicated that to Cynthia Morris because she's the one who really kicked my ass into getting it done. Like, I had talked about it for months. I had showed her some of the writing, and she's like, yeah, that's cool, but when are you going to ship it? How are you going to get it done? What are your milestones? And so as a coach, she really squeezed me into making sure it was getting done each week. And I give her a ton of credit for that. Cynthia is an amazing author and writer in her own right. Her second book, Chasing Sylvia Beach, came out about 1.5 years ago. Amazing novel set in Paris. I have my copy around here. My signed copy, by the way. I have my copy around here, by the way. But she's also this... The day I met Cynthia, she was talking about finishing her book and getting ready to launch her book in the world. But then she revealed that she does this amazing graphic capture. And the graphic capture is so compelling and inspiring. But she carries these tools, these journals with her everywhere she goes. And she documents life in real time in these journals. She'll go all over the world. This is probably in France, I would imagine. And then these things...
Rome.
Oh, that's Rome. They roll out like accordions. And just about a week ago, I got to share this and make sure I don't share my home address. Not that I don't want you guys showing up, but I get this cool little envelope, not so little envelope in the mail. And inside it is this beautiful little message from my friend Cynthia Morris. It says, "We're all in this together. Great expectations." I thought it was just so beautiful, so I haven't had a chance to frame it yet, but I have a wall in my office that is basically just your artwork, Cynthia, and I could tell you that what you do and what you give to your fellow artists and creators is something truly special. So just know before we kick off that you've affected me and indirectly all of my listeners through your work. So, is that a good intro?
Sure.
All right, cool.
I'm just so excited to be here with you because you're just so much fun.
Are you just saying that?
I don't ever just say anything.
I know.
I'm not a BSer. People who know me know that.
Yeah. Oh, trust me, I know. No, that's cool. I've been looking forward to this for a while. And by the way, everybody, we originally had two guests on this week's show, and my friend Monique is really, really sick with a head cold, and because she's a singer, I didn't want her to show up and be just a mess. So, but it worked out great because we have more time with Cynthia because there's a few topics we want to dive a little bit deeper into. So, are you ready to roll, Cynthia Morris? I got some questions for you.
I am. Yes, go.
Yeah. So one of the things we were talking about is this idea about the difference between living creatively and what it means to create art. Can you talk a little bit about how you've experienced those two things separately in both your coaching work and coaching creatives as well as creating your own artwork?
Yeah, and this was something that I was very clear about right when I became a coach and decided to focus on writers and creativity. I realized that creativity can encompass everything. Creativity is more like an adjective or a way of doing things, a way of speaking. Like the way you're doing the webinar is very creative. Is it an art piece? Yes, we could say that, but I think I make a distinction between being creative and making something, whether that something is a song or a book or a meal. I think that's art making. So yeah. I'm not really sure why the distinction was so important to me, but to me they are very different things, and we can all be creative. When people say I'm not creative, everybody's creative just by their uniqueness. Everybody's DNA is unique, so everybody, the way they act and live in the world is going to be creative. Not everybody is an artist, though. Not everybody is making art, and art could be a business too. I mean, I think the category of art is also very broad. It's not just a painting you hang on the wall.
Sure. Tell me a little bit about that insight we talked about on the phone the other day, where you were cooking, you were providing food for a family at a point in your career, and you know what I'm talking about?
This was great. This was the year I became a coach, and I had a couple of different income streams to support me while I built my business. This was 1999, and I was a vegetarian cooking instructor at the time, and I had a gig as a personal chef for a family, and every week I would make them a bunch of really great food, and they would come and pick it up. And one week they were out of town, and I didn't have that work that week, so I felt this urge, I felt this creative need come up in me, and it was this huge light bulb moment for me that I had been putting so much of my creative energy into that work of planning and preparing meals for a family that there wasn't really as much of that urge or that need to get my creative jollies in other ways. So once that was missing, I really felt like, oh, I need to make something or write something. That was a big moment for me.
That's so interesting because as I bounce around from different projects, I realize that each of them fill that kind of creative Jones for me in different ways. And of course, we'll talk about in a minute about when we're ready when we start resisting a project and we want to be done with it to move on to the next thing. But I thought that insight was so powerful to me to realize that fix has to come from somewhere. And just that awareness of knowing that, wow, something's missing here. What is it? Oh, yeah, I get a lot out of creating this stuff. And it could be a meal or any number of things. I just thought that was pretty powerful.
Yeah, so you maybe for the people on the call today, just thinking about, you've got a creative tank, you've got a reservoir of your creativity that's replenished every day. And so you might ask yourself, where am I going to spend my creativity today? And parents, conversations with your children, taking care of your family, work. I mean, there's so many places to get our creative expression out in the world.
So let's talk a little bit about that because you talked about this output of creativity that we have this tank and you have to replenish it. But you just released your annual report where you talk a lot about some of the things we're talking about in the 2014 project, which are kind of replenishing practices. And what have you learned about that in the past couple years, as far as this myth of the tortured, unhealthy artist and stuff? I think it's really important that we debunk that.
Well, my belief is that our creativity is the source of our vitality. And I noticed this when I was early in my writing life, and I would go and write at the cafe, and then I would leave the cafe, and I would just feel great. I
Yeah.
felt like sexy. I felt, it wasn't like I wanted to go have sex, but I felt that kind of generative energy of
Yeah.
aliveness. And I thought, wow, this is good stuff. I made this. I did this just from doing my own writing. It wasn't from watching a movie or absorbing somebody else's creativity. So
Yeah.
that pretty much formed my mission to help more people feel their own vitality
Wow.
through their creative work.
Yeah.
So that then, as I started working, I guess as I got older and I went through the Life Project, I became more aware of the need to cultivate my vitality. So,
Hmm.
ironically, our creativity is a source of our vitality, but if we don't have any vitality,
Yeah.
if we don't have any energy, we don't want to create. So,
Yeah.
they're kind of synergistic. Um, so, I had some clarity last night as I was thinking about this in terms of practices and rituals. And we had talked about one of the biggest problems that creative people face is um, having a difficult time with transitions.
Oh
Transitions
yeah. This is
in a
powerful.
day, in a week, in
Hmm.
a month, in a life. Going from talking to your child or dropping your child off at school, then to go and to write your book, there's
Right.
some transition time that needs to happen there. And then, so going in and out of the creative act is a
Hmm.
very kind of a tender time period.
Yep.
Often people will get so involved with making something and then they look up and they have to dash out to the store. And I think that's
Yeah.
kind of like soul ripping, because you're dashing out to the door, out the door, driving down the road. You're still kind of mentally and energetically in that creative space.
Hmm.
um, no wonder it makes it hard for you to get to your creative time. So being careful, and by that I mean taking care of yourself as you go into and out of the creative space or anything. You probably pulled up from work and you're like, okay, I need to kind of take a few breaths and center myself before I go in and
Yeah.
greet my family.
Right.
So it's just that need to pause and be aware of what's happening in that moment.
Hmm.
And so when I think about rituals to make those transitions, that's really what it's about. It's about stopping and being aware. And
Hmm.
all of my drawing and the painting and the capture that I do is really all about cultivating my attention
Hmm.
and being aware, being present, being mindful. And so rituals that help you go in and out of your creative space can be very helpful. And just a few that I use. I was listing my rituals last night and I laughed because I sound so new agey, but things like aromatherapy, uh, scents, smells are really
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Anything that
Yep.
tunes you into a sensual
Well,
moment. So
it
aromatherapy.
creates like a cue for the habit loop to kick in. Like you and I talked about this when you said, "How are you going to write this thing?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to sit down my computer and type." And you said, "No, you need to start setting these transitions." And one of the ones we discovered for me was that because I light a candle before I meditate, I know that I'm clocked in for an hour as soon as I light that candle. You said light a candle at your desk and say this means 15 minutes of writing. So creating those transition cues just so it becomes a sacred time that cannot be interrupted or broken up. And that was such a gift because the time exists regardless. And we've talked a lot on this program about, bending time in your favor, but it's kind of like drawing a line in the sand around it and making that time non-negotiable with that kind of transition cue that gets into it. I thought that was a powerful insight I got from you.